My name's Graham Mynott. I'm the director of Hebden Bridge Community Association. We're the charity that owns and runs the town hall. I'm delighted that we've been able to put this talk on, and hugely grateful to Diana. She has put an amazing amount of work into this, which you will about to experience. And it's absolutely terrific. So I'm really looking forward to doing this, and thank you very much for coming. But without further ado.
Yes, I think a lot of you probably already know me. I'm Diana Monahan from the Hebden Bridge Local History Society. In telling the story of how the council buildings came into existence, we don't wish to cause offence. The mindset, culture and use of language in the late 19th century were very different to today. You might find the men sound very pompous and arrogant, but they were mostly self-made businessmen who took pride in their growing town and wanted to improve the conditions of everyone who lived there. Better sanitation, water supplies, roads and education, access to gas, electricity and libraries. It is a story about men. The town elected its first lady councillor in 1919, Mrs. Jessie Greenwood, or Jess Greenwood. We have not researched her yet, but Jess or Jessie would be her husband's name, not her own. It was to be many more years before Sheila Doyle became the mayor of Hebden Bridge. The main sources used are 3 newspaper reports, which go into so much detail that I've had to edit them considerably. So when you're yawning your heads off, bear in mind it could have been at least twice as long. So we'll begin with the actual opening, 1898. Unfortunately, this photograph, though, was taken in 1910, showing the council's declaration of the accession of King George V when his father Edward VII died. And I thought it was an appropriate image in view of recent events. The photo shows huge crowds outside the council offices, and also what was alongside where now we have our new town hall buildings. So this little feature here, I have no idea what that is. I haven't found that out yet. The opening of the council building did not attract such huge crowds. I would like to hand over now to a reporter from the Hebden Bridge Times and Calder Valley Gazette, who is based at the Times office in the former Ebenezer Chapel, and his words are read by Mr. Paul Monahan.
It's Wednesday afternoon, 11th of May 1898, and, as you might expect, the weather is not favourable. The members and officials of the Hebden Bridge Urban District Council met earlier at the old council chamber in Market Street and have marched in procession through the streets to arrive at the doors of the new offices, where a fair sprinkling of ratepayers are here to witness the opening ceremony, despite the weather. A new flag is hoisted in the honour of the occasion. Now let us listen to some of the speeches.
So now it's over to Councillor Horsfall.
It is a very important and interesting ceremony in which we are about to take part. We are met for the purpose of formally opening this handsome pile of buildings, which is henceforth to be devoted to the needs and requirements of the Urban District Council of Hebden Bridge. When the first local board was formed about 35 years ago, the members used to meet at the White Horse Hotel. Then they moved to Hebden Hall, and afterwards, about 18 years ago, to the offices in Market Street. But for some years back, the members of the council had felt that fast increasing business required more adequate accommodation than the Market Street offices afforded. And so eventually, this site was chosen, and this handsome building was erected. This day we are met as members of the Hebden Bridge community, as ratepayers, and as those who have been elected by the ratepayers to manage the affairs of the district. And I think we are justified in taking some little pride on this occasion. We might even have been justified in bringing some great person to open the building, This does make me laugh. But the council has very rightly decided to ask our hard-working and much-esteemed chairman, Mr. E.J. Crossley, to perform this function.
Hear, hear. That's your role.
Yes. As chairman of the property committee, I have been asked to present to you a gold key wherewith to open the door of the new offices as a memento of this occasion, and to declare the offices open. I am sure you will cherish the key in years to come as a remembrance of that day and the occasion.
The gold key presented to Mr. Crossley is a very handsome one, placed in a suitable case and has been supplied by a Halifax firm of jewellers. On one side there is the inscription, presented to Councillor E.J. Crossley, Esquire, Chairman of the Hebden Bridge Urban District Council, on his opening of the new offices, 11th of May 1898. On the other side there is engraved a facsimile of the council's seal, the central feature of which is the old bridge. The key has been subscribed by members and officials of the council.
I have been in touch with some of the relatives of Mr. Crossley, but so far the key has not been located. So we'll have to ask Mr. Crossley to open the door with these, which were once used by the council. So it's Mr. E.J. Crossley now.
These don't fit any doors anymore. It affords me very great pleasure to use this key. I regard it as a great honour, particularly because it comes from my colleagues and because, to my mind, it shows appreciation of the interest I have taken in the building and completion of the new offices. I am sure every member of the council, present or past, would agree with me in the feeling of pleasure at this opening, because anyone who has sat in the old offices through long meetings knows some of the sufferings they had to undergo through bad ventilation, cramped space, and in many other ways. Taking these past experiences into account, we might justly claim that these new offices, erected to suit our requirements, should be provided. If it were possible to do it over again, the building would be slightly improved, but there are a few towns, even of greater population, which could boast of a handsomer suite of rooms. I do not regard any part of the money as wasted. We could not expect that competent businessmen would give their time and services to the town unless they were reasonably well housed. It has been said that it is possible to judge the character of a town's work by its public buildings. If that is so, the Hebden Bridge Council would prefer to be judged by the new offices and not by the old. We have tried to do our work honestly and straightforwardly, in the past under difficult surroundings, and now that we have got our new habitation, I hope there will be no feeling of begrudgment among the ratepayers because of the expense. I thank you, Mr. Horsfall, for your kind words, and all my colleagues and the officials for subscribing and presenting me with this golden key, which I will cherish as a mark of one of the most interesting occasions of my life. I declare the new offices open.
The councillors and officials then climbed the stairs to the council chamber and took their seats officially for the first time. There was a short meeting which reviewed the origin and history of the new offices and an account of the cost, which the newspaper report covered in great detail. But one is left wondering if the reporter left early, because the minutes of the meeting record that before the councillors adjourned to prepare for the banquet in the evening, a motion was passed that the offices be thrown open to the public for the next 3 days, and there was no mention in the newspaper report of this. Before we return to the banquet at 7 p.m, here is how the council buildings came to be built. As Councillor Horsfall mentioned, meetings were held at White Horse Hotel, now the site of the market. These were probably meetings of the Wadsworth Local Board of Health, and then those of Hebden Bridge District Board, which was formed in 1866 as a consequence of the government awarding Hebden Bridge town status. When Hebden Hall was created, around 1872, from what was once Ebenezer Chapel and then the Sunday School for Hope Chapel, the board met there. According to a 1907 obituary, the town's business was then transacted in one of the basements of the Times office, the Times having moved into Ebenezer Chapel in the 1880s. Councillor Horsfall mentioned that for about 18 years, the next place for board meetings was in offices in Market Street. We have yet to discover where they were, but at this time, much of Market Street was still to be built. Councillor Crossley commented that at the close of the last council meeting, they were in a dazed condition through the impure atmosphere in which they had sat for so long. It sounds as if they could have been suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning, or perhaps it was the effect of any long council meeting, even today. In their dazed condition, these were some of the decisions being made between 1890 up to 1897. In September 1890, a committee was appointed to make inquiries about having new offices. They reported back in November, and Mr. Crossley proposed a motion to obtain plans and estimates. However, an amendment that no further action be taken was carried. At this time, the Manchester and Liverpool Bank were proposed to build new premises and thought that they might be in a position to accommodate the council as well as themselves. So an approach to the council was made, and in 1891, an office accommodation committee was appointed to meet the bank's representative, Mr. Nicol, and in January 1892, the committee reported back. Mr. Crossley proposed that the bank's offer be accepted, but the motion was rejected by the board 7 votes to 5, and thus the matter fell through a second time. And consequently, today's council uses a smaller council chamber than the one offered by the bank. As a result of inquiries made by the Special Bath Committee, in 1893, Garden Square, the Hole in the Wall Inn and Blackwater Street were all purchased by the council. The Special Bath Committee were to be disappointed with what followed. January 1894 saw a committee being formed to deal with this Garden Square estate. And very shortly afterwards, a resolution proposed yet again by Mr. Crossley that public offices be erected there was passed without any opposition. Just over a year later, plans for the building were adopted and an application made to the local government board for sanction to borrow £6,750. The application went to a public inquiry in May 1895, but in September borrowing powers were sanctioned. It seems the mortgages for loans were arranged with Wolverhampton Corporation. This was what was agreed according to the 1896 minutes. However, this did not always match the newspaper report of the opening. Newspapers are not always accurate, but on the other hand, I'm at a Mr. Council minute where finances were adjusted. In the report, it said, the ratepayers might feel inclined to grumble about the extravagance because all this borrowing meant an annual charge of £196, 5 shillings and 6pence. The old premises in Market Street had cost £40 a year. And had the council taken up the bank's offer, it would have cost £80 a year. But Mr. Crossley did not take that view. Over to you, Mr. Councillor Crossley.
It must be remembered that the annual charge is not simply a rent, but that we are purchasing the building at the same time. In 30 years, the building will be our own and paid for, and in 50 years, the land will also be free. If we have erred at all, it is that we have not made the offices large enough. Originally, larger premises were planned, but with a view to economy, they have been cut down as low as they can go. The offices are much after the style first conceived, but reduced.
The committee had been treated badly. He was also probably disappointed because he was a member of the Band of Hope and Temperance Union and hoped to see the hole-in-the-wall pub demolished. It was demolished, but the temperance campaign failed to stop the Halifax Brewery Company building a new hole-in-the-wall in 1899, when the brewery was able to acquire the old one. But that is a story we do not have time for tonight. Returning to the fact that the offices were designed after the style first conceived, but reduced in size all round, here is what the reporter had to say. And you can take your coat off if you're getting too hot.
Well, as a reporter, we have certain standards to maintain. Whether the policy adopted was a wise one remains to be proved. The result has been to cramp the rooms, whereas if the original estimate had been carried out, the council chamber is exquisitely fitted up and furnished from the architect's drawings. The furniture is of fumed oak, upholstered in short velvet pile plush. Considering the limited space occupies the central chair, which is on a raised platform and contains a panel carved to resemble the seal of the council. Immediately adjoining him is a special seat for the clerk, and facing him is a small table for the officials. The councillors are ranged around the table, curved in semicircular form, with a drawer provided therein for the use of each member. No expense has been spared to make the councillors comfortable. The chairs provided for their ease, being very up to date, are worth about £3 each. There are 16 of these chairs and half a dozen stools for the use of the despised reporters and possibly any audacious ratepayer who should happen to enter. It would be rather awkward if the ratepayers should decide to exercise their rights to attend the council meetings in large numbers. No provision is made for any urgency of this kind. In fact, when all the members are present, the room is pretty well utilised. Apart from this, the council chamber undoubtedly. The walls are lined to the height of about 8 feet, with a dado of polished mahogany with oak panels, and the room is a picture of comfort, neatness and grandeur. Modern conveniences in the shape of cloakroom and lavatories are provided on 2 of the floors. The fireplaces in all the rooms are of glazed faience, which is a tin glazed pottery, on the teal front hob principle. It is quite a novelty in this district. Otherwise, the building is heated by low pressure steam and the rooms are lighted by means of Wenham gas lamps.
As well as detailed descriptions, the newspaper gave the sizes of all the rooms. And sizes of all the rooms. And I'll hand over at this point to Graham Mynott as the Executive Director at the Hebden Bridge Community Hall Association, which owns and runs the town hall.
So we thought we'd just interrupt briefly to tell you what was there and what is there now. And the main thing that came out of this for me, actually, was that the room that we call the committee room which is we call the Greenwood room, and it's going to come up shortly, was not the original committee room. So on the right-hand side, these are the rather glorious descriptions for the people who had the offices. So the one at the front is the gas and rate collector's office. The one behind is the surveyor's office. The clerk's office is the one down here, and that's the one on the corner as you come over the bridge. That will be the clerk's office. And this is my favourite. Under the stairs was the nuisance inspector. Currently, on the left-hand side, the front office here that was the gas and rates is an office that's being used by the council, Calderdale Council. The police occupy the one behind, which is the surveyor's office, sadly not the nuisance inspector's one. The touchdown point is a space that the council, Calderdale Council, have used for some years. And what they call the nuisance inspector, we call the TARDIS, because it's one of those rooms with a very small door, and then you go in and it's full of junk. And it's much bigger than on the inside than on the outside. We still have the kitchen. Do you want to just flick to the next one? We haven't shown the basement and the attic because they're basically the same as they were in 1897, 1898. Council chamber is obviously completely unchanged, as Diana and Paul have explained. When you read that description and you stand in the council chamber, it's pretty much identical to it was then. The two offices that are in current occupation by Hebden Royd Town Council, the clerk and the deputy clerk, back in the day were the committee room, which is the Jason Boone's office, the clerk's office, and then another smaller office which is undescribed in the original things. And the toilets are probably very similar. And if you've ever been in the gents' toilets in the old building, the toilet is spectacular. Let me just leave it like that. Of course you can. Yes, please do. It's a terrific example of Victorian toilet architecture in a male toilet. It's fantastic. In what is now the Greenwood room, so around 1915, an office in the fire station extension, which is the bit that you come through now, with the big green doors, that's the fire station extension. And there's an office that was built into that room. So in around 1915, an office in that extension became the committee room, and an external corridor was added at the back of the council chamber to facilitate access, because otherwise you'd have to go down the stairs, out front door, along the corridor, along the street, in the main doors, and up the stairs again, because there was no other way to get through between the two. So that is why we have that strange walkway across the back.
Yes, the fire station extension. In 1896, plans for a fire brigade station and additional offices were approved, and with finance from the Public Works Loan Board, it was opened, and oh, I did have a picture of that, sorry. It was opened in 1898. Just catch up on our slides. So originally they would have had to walk down there, go in through this door and up into the offices if they'd not put that little balcony that you saw there. Not balcony, little veranda. Now the fire brigade had been formed 14 years earlier, in 1884, so they had a very long wait to be provided. In July that year, the council sold part of the estate not required to Pickles and Son. And this involved approving an easement between the council and George Pickles and John Crowther relating to drawing water from the River Hebden and returning it after use. Oops. Yeah. Perhaps one reason for the delay is hinted at in the council minutes: the attitude of George Pickles. This is Mr. Pickles of Royd Iron Works, situated between Royd Terrace and Hanging Royd Lane, behind the town hall. Mr. Pickles of Hanging Royd, machine maker, had been a councillor. He appears in lists of councillors in 1895, but not after that. He must have been familiar, though, with the way that councils functioned. This photo shows the new St George's Bridge and Blackwater Street, showing the houses which were to be demolished to build the council buildings. Councillor Jackson, the chairman of the property committee, explained that Mr Pickles claims to be the owner of the bed of the river abutting the council's new offices and objects to the balcony which the council have erected over the river bed, and that unless the council are prepared to give common rights over the said balcony to Mr Pickles on certain terms, he desires to know upon whom any legal process may be served in this matter. Oops, I'm ahead of myself. I think these two photos show the side of the building, and I think what was meant by the balcony are these steps and this path made of large stone flags, which can be seen in this photograph here, and presumably allowed access for maintenance of the side of the council building. I think that the end result of the bickering was that in 1898, Pickles sold back to the council the triangular piece along the southeast side of the council offices, now forming the bed of the river, and the council granted to George Pickles and John Crowther the right-of-way over flagged footway and steps from St George's Bridge to their water service pipe laid on the River Hebden, and the council placed a gate at the entrance to the footway in St George's Bridge, or St George's Street. And in this map, it's that little yellow bit there that the council purchased back from Mr Pickles. The steps beside the council offices were to continue to cause problems into the 21st century. In 1899, after all the council buildings had been finished, George Pickles informed the council that he intended to build on Garden Square and link the building with his works by a bridge over Hanging Royd Lane. But he would leave right of way to the council for a roadway to the back of their fire station and offices. Two years later, Mr Pickles sold some of his land to Halifax Corporation, reserving the right to proceed to his water pipe over the flagged footpath from St George's Street to the rear of the public offices, and that the new owner could not draw water from a point higher up than Pickles' water pipe. And a flagged footpath was built alongside the new building, presumably again for maintenance access to the building, but also to provide Mr Pickles with his access. The hole in the wall to the left in this photograph is possibly where Mr Pickles had the pipes going into the river. Halifax Corporation bought the land because they were extending their tramway system to Hebden Bridge and wanted to build an electric substation to provide power. Transformers and rotary converters were installed to convert the 6,600 volt supply to a form suitable for the trams. They also offered to supply Hebden Bridge with electricity, but the offer was rejected by the local council, who then built its own electricity works in Valley Road. And these photos actually show the inside of the Valley Road works, but it would have been similar. Although the trams continued until 1936, in 1925, Halifax Corporation no longer needed the substation, so they sold the building to Hebden Bridge Urban District Council, who converted it to the town's library. In 1947, the first floor became used by the National Fire Service to provide a recreation room, office and control room. Anyway, enough of the history. Let us join the banquet at the White Horse Hotel under the able supervision of Mr Marsh of Halifax. It is a very male-orientated affair. women's roles at this time in history were centred around providing sustenance, cleaning, working in the local mills, managing the household with or without servants, and producing children, and rearing them with or without servants. Over to the reporter.
The Civic banquet. Food served. Asparagus soup, salmon with parsley sauce, fillets of beef stuffed with tomatoes, sweetbreads and mushrooms, roast beef, roast lamb with mint sauce, boiled fowls, tongue, caviar on toast, dessert, vanilla ices, council pudding, gooseberry tart, brandy jelly, pineapple cream, caviar on toast, more vanilla ices, dessert and coffee. The press were not invited.
They were. There were 2 places assigned to the press.
Oh, I didn't go. However, during dinner, an efficient string band under Mr. H.U. Greenwood's conductorship played choice selections of music in the corridor, and the Hebden Bridge Brass Band voluntarily paraded in honour of the occasion and afterwards played in front of the hotel.
Now, obviously this isn't them parading through the White Horse, but we're not quite sure of the date of that photograph, but it probably gives you some idea. At the front of this parade, we have Hebden Bridge Brass Band, and I don't know exactly how they might manage to go through a hotel playing, but they did. Councillor E.J. Crossley, chairman of the council and host, occupied the chair at the head of the table, and Councillor James Moss, the vice chairman, filled the vice chair at the opposite end. There were 32 more guests, including 2 representatives of the press. In the hierarchy of guests, the paper gives the complete list of all 32 names. And I've tried to find out more about them and searched for photos. And I found this one. Councillor Clarence W. Greenwood, chairman of the Mythenroyd Council, from when they had opened their offices the year before. So they got one over on Hebden Bridge. I think it was a race to see who could get the which building finished first. But as this talk is about the building, we won't focus on the guests who had been involved in the actual we won't focus on the guests, but we'd look at the people who were involved in the actual construction, beginning with John Sutcliffe. The entire work had been very successfully carried out under the supervision of the local architects Sutcliffe and Sutcliffe. In 1895, John Sutcliffe, architect and surveyor of Hazelwood, Hebden Bridge, had formed a partnership with his former apprentice, George Sutcliffe of Heptonstall, who was no relation to John, unless you go back presumably many, many generations. We couldn't find it. We went back. George had passed his exams and was now an associate at the Royal Institute of British Architects, which is the ARIB abbreviation on this slide. The other qualification shown is probably John's, which is a member of the Sanitary Institute. He had been apprenticed to a Halifax architect many years earlier. And 2 of John's sons and Walter Parker were also working with the firm at this time, and their main office was at Roomfield Buildings in Todmorden, and I presume the Hebden Bridge bit would probably be an office in Hazelwood. Now, in this list of workers, you'll find that there's quite a number of local people. And those who came to the banquet were Benjamin Lum, the stonemasons and brickwork, the contractor there, John Edward Wrigley, but he was represented by Thomas Wrigley. Sorry, he was representing Thomas Wrigley and Sons. And Thomas Blackburn, who was representing Messrs Greenwood and Blackburn. And there's also Mr Bailey from Halifax, who's responsible for all that fine furniture that we saw earlier on.
Having eaten, the first toast of the evening was, of course, devoted to the Queen. It was proposed by the chairman, Mr Crossley, in suitable terms, and duly honoured by the company by the singing of the national anthem. The Mayor of Todmorden, in his toast, congratulated the chairman for having the honour of being chairman of the council on such a historic occasion as the opening of the new offices, saying that it was a very great advantage to the district when they could find men of suitable business ability and tact to give their time to public service. Fortunate it was if the elected could come to a more or less unanimous vote in the appointment of a chairman, and a chairman who had got some backbone in him and was not a jellyfish. From having read the reports of the council for many years in the local papers, he judged that it was a model council. When the council had argued questions, they had done it in a parliamentary way. He had never heard of black eyes being inflicted, but they had conducted their business in a business-like way, each member doing his best for the community. There was the water question, for instance, which is at Todmorden more of a burning question. There is no district within the United Kingdom that had made such a bargain as Hebden Bridge had done with regard to its water supply. He proposed the toast, and Councillor Crossley replied.
Over to Councillor Crossley.
I thank the Mayor for his kind words. And although I cannot accept all the flattering things he has said about the council, yet I confess that it is a council of which I am exceedingly proud. We try to conduct our business in a reasonable, gentlemanly way, and while we sometimes differ, we are agreeable in our differences. And I hope we will never have occasion to alter the line of procedure which we have followed in the past. Men elected on public authorities should see and recognise that there is bound to be differences of opinion, and they should allow others to disagree with them without hurt to the feelings of any member. I am particularly pleased to welcome the representatives from neighbouring authorities with whom we are associated in various ways. In the gas undertaking, the Fielden and Sowerhall hospitals, in technical instruction, and in the assessment committee of the union. Hebden Bridge Council has achieved a creditable water supply to the district, and I express a wish that our neighbours at Todmorden should get well through their present difficulties in that matter, and eventually come out with a supply as cheap and as efficient as that of Hebden Bridge. We are proceeding with the main sewer as fast as we can, and have already commenced operations with the outfall works. This was a thing which had been forced upon the district, but I think we must all admit that the attitude of the County Council was only reasonable in view of the dirty state of the rivers. There are certain things which the district has not yet got, a free library among them being one of the things we would like to have. I congratulate the neighbouring borough of Todmorden upon its excellent institution, which I am told is of such dimensions that it would be a credit to a much larger town. It is one of the things where Todmorden is ahead of Hebden Bridge. But the cooperative society here has an excellent library which serves the district very well indeed. In other directions, we are trying to effect improvements. The approach to the railway station is an absolute disgrace to Hebden Bridge, and I hope that the influence of the Board of Trade will be brought to bear and that the railway company will see their way to effect an improvement. Since becoming a town in 1866, the population has grown from 3,300 to 8,500. They have all the facilities afforded by an unstinted water supply, and there is grit and determination to make things go, and we expect that someday the town will spread its wings to wider regions than those already covered. I wish to read this letter from my father, County Councillor D.J. Crossley JP, who would have been present on this occasion, but he is unfortunately confined to the house.
Councillor Crossley read out his father's letter, in which he said that the chairman of the West Riding County Council gave it as his opinion that members of so important a council ought to have premises as comfortable and convenient as could well be provided, and that the same principle applied to lesser authorities. When gentlemen are willing to come forward, Councillor Horsfall then proposed a toast.
Over to Councillor Horsfall.
My toast has a strong local government flavour about it. English folk have always had a knack of self-government. It is a healthy sign when we find men of business ability and intelligence ready to take their part in rural and civic life. Not very long ago, public bodies were looked down upon with some slight feeling of contempt. But that feeling has disappeared, and men of business and affairs are now ready and willing to become members, and we find dukes and other members of the House of Lords willing to become mayors of towns and cities. I hope this principle will continue, and that there will always be competent men willing to devote time and ability in the management of public affairs.
Councillor Spur from Manchester responded in a few appropriate words, followed by Councillor Lord, the chairman of the Rural District Council, who, in alluding to the work of the Rural District Council, said that they have been considered by their constituents and by the press to be a very slow body. But it was no small work that they had undertaken. They had to do the work of the Highways Authority and attend to sanitary matters.
Now then, I think we ought to interrupt there. We must leave them there because the newspaper continued its lengthy report about the workings of the council, whereas the intention tonight was to just tell a story of how the building came to exist. What went on in the building is another tale. And I'd like to thank all the people and various societies that have contributed to tonight's heritage event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great fun. I enjoyed that. If only I'd had a full outfit like Paul. We've still got some teas and coffees, and we've got some small mini cake refreshments coming in a second. But this is just an opportunity. You can ask us to go back over any slides, ask any questions, ask about anything that's going on. I did just want to say one thing that Diana mentioned. If you could just flick back, one of the most interesting things, and Ebony will know this. Ebony and Chris, who are staff here, will know this.
Sorry.
One of the fascinating things for me about this was that damned thing down the side of the building with the steps and the plinth out the side. It's been the bane of our lives, not least because we on a regular basis have intruders coming down the side of the building, putting graffiti on the side of the building, and we had the entertainments in the first lockdown of a group of teenagers who came into the courtyard, climbed up the side of the building, up onto the upper terrace just along here, and decided to throw half our furniture into the river. And but my favourite, and I do need to tell you my favourite, is we had a complaint from the Shoulder of Mutton, somebody who was living in the Shoulder of Mutton, about somebody who was in our courtyard one night and making a lot of noise. And we were like, well, you know, there was no event in the building, so duly we got on the CCTV, and it turned out that it was Valentine's night, and it was I still don't really understand what was going on, but these two blokes came along the side of the building, hopped over. They had two plastic bags with them. They sat themselves down in a corner seat in the cafe, and proceeded to have an entire picnic on one of our cafe tables, just chatting there, and then left a bit later on, took all the rubbish with them, and just left again. I think we found a sort of one bottle left in the courtyard. It's quite extraordinary. So now, and with this story, I now know I can blame Mr. George Pickles entirely for any further problems we have with that set of steps and the ramp. There we go. Thank you.
I'm happy to answer questions, and if anybody wants to see the toilet or the seal, I actually took some photographs this afternoon because the council building was open, and you could go into the toilets, the men's toilets, you knocked on the door first. So I took a photograph, and I also took one of the seal that's over in the chairman's chair, because I couldn't find a photograph of it. It's a beautiful carving, and it's even got three little people standing on the bridge, their heads sticking over the top. And the buildings on either side are old buildings. So it's lovely.
Can you explain?
Yes.
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 It
was the
sorry.
That one. Yes. This is on its opening day, so all these people are lined up on the gasworks. Why I don't know how gasworks work. Why there was? Would that be escape routes? Do you think that is on the side?
No. There'll be people working in the gasworks.
No, I know the people working on the gasworks, but what is the structure that goes at the side? I know there's a pulley at the top there as well.
Well, that's obviously for lifting. Probably equipment rather than help, because that came off the chute.
Yeah, it came off the chute, didn't it? Yeah. There are quite a lot of archives related to the Crone Nest works, if anybody wants to go into it. But you can actually walk down there and still see remains of where it was and the chutes and things. Yeah. I mean, there was a gasworks there before, a privately owned one, and I'm just trying to remember whether they demolished what was there or whether they actually extended and built this superior thing here.
Same ships dressed overall with all the troops still held on.
Yeah. It is, isn't it? Yeah.
That's like the guys on the beat. Thanks for the way you went and as well.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in the spectral nuisance. Wondering if like some records they kept or they kept.
Yes, there are records as well. I think the records minutes are probably at Calderdale, possibly with the local studies rather than the archives, but I might be wrong. But the thing that you can go and see in Hebden Bridge Library, I think, and certainly at Calderdale in the local studies, is the minute books. And every so often there'd be a report from the nuisance inspector to the council, so you can get also a general overview of what he was doing. But if you read the minutes in detail, you get really lots of little details about people, and their names and the people and what they're doing to be a nuisance and what they were going to do about it to try and sort it out. Yeah, it's actually quite fascinating. Minutes sound very boring, but in those days they had decisions made and things, and they recorded them all. And as I say, the nuisance inspector's annual report to the council is fascinating. Oh, yes. Yeah. When Hebden Bridge was undergoing, we did a Who Built Hebden Bridge exhibition last year, and when I was doing research for that, one of the stonemasons got told off for leaving piles of building material, presumably in the middle of the road in the centre of town, causing difficulties. But it could also be sewage rather, not sewers, sewage. And yeah, there was, I'm just trying to think of other examples.
Well, I think the ranges and look around now. You apart from cars, so modern things like that. nuisance capture found in the buildings, leaving rubbish in the streets, noise.
No, I don't remember reading anything about noise, no. The other thing that mentioned about the sewers, the sewers was being constructed at Redacre in Mythenroyd. That was going to be the Hebden Bridge sewage works, and it hadn't been finished at this stage when this was opened. And what would happen normally with the contents of the toilet, and mostly they were sort of dry toilets, and they'd put ash on, and the night soilman would come and take it away and dump it. Usually it was put on the land at Mayroyd. And that was another nuisance, yes. Councillor Crossley, it was either Councillor Crossley or his father, complained about the smell. And so that was a nuisance, yes, the overpowering odour of night soil. Trying to think what else there was. But they actually, the reason why they had to undertake this problem with the sewage and everything was because there'd been a major government inquiry. I'm just trying to remember the date, it might have been, I think there were two actually, one in the 1870s, one in the 1880s, because there'd been enteric fever or something in the town, and it was caused by insanitary facilities, and so they were actually forced to do something about it because the inquiry was very legislated the council, really. And that makes very interesting reading in the newspaper. It goes on for pages and pages, but it is quite fascinating, especially if you've got to know, as I have done from doing my research, all the little people and characters that are mentioned in the story. And it goes right down to Mrs. So-and-so and talks about her children. And it's really good. I think lots of people think utilities is boring, and I find it absolutely fascinating.
Diana, could you just skip back to the picture of the ironworks?
Of the ironworks, yeah.
I was trying to make sense out of the picture.
I apologise, by the way. Sorry.
I've seen it a few times, and I can't. I'm just trying to get my head around it.
Right, which I apologise for this thing. I was trying. I know when I touched the pointer, I occasionally flicked it onto the next slide.
So the one that's in the top right. So what you're seeing, the top right picture, that building on the left-hand side is the hole in the wall pub.
That's the new hole in the wall, yes.
Right, okay.
Yes, and so this is Hanging Royd, is it Lane? Yeah. And this building here goes very extensively right back. I'm not quite sure whether that was built in front. I haven't actually researched. I've done a bit of research on Royd Ironworks and where it went to, which is at Mytham. It went to that site that's derelict at the moment in Mytham. So I've done a little bit of research, and I know there's a list of planning applications, which because of COVID I wasn't able to go and see. So when I was doing the research for who built Hebden Bridge, a lot of it I had to guess from the planning applications, but not actually seeing them to actually see if my guess was right. So I had to hedge things a lot. But this is a view that would have been taken probably from the buttress or from Royd, what is it, that little street? Royd Terrace, that's it, Royd Terrace, which goes behind. Yeah. That's the mill that burnt down, I think, yeah. So this is a 20th century photo, yeah. Anybody else want to see anything? I mean, what I could do, I could go back to the beginning and then just flick through and you can say stop. Right. So let's just shout stop if you want me to. That one is. I was just talking now about the pickles moving to the site at Mytham. Mytham Hall is where Mytham Court is now. And it wasn't built for the pickles, but they did live in it for a while as well. And you can still see the ha-ha. That's St James Church, and this is the ha-ha that's still there, in front of the council-owned field where children play on. So that's that one. That one. Right. This is Calder Holmes Park before it was a park. And building a park in 1937, they raised this land. This was being used, I think, as well for a certain amount of rubbish tipping. But they decided they better get loads and loads of stuff in because they needed to raise the park because it was a floodplain and flooded even more than it does today. So that has actually been raised quite a lot. You can see that that's the level of the canal. And you can see it's steep. I mean, there is a slope now, but it's not as much as that. And this site here is the site of the car park in New Road. That building there is the second building that was on the site. The first one was a spinning mill, and it was 5 stories plus an attic, so it was huge. And we have a painting and a billhead that shows it. And in I think one of the recessions with cotton industry, Daniel Jones Crossley, who was his father, I think, decided that he would demolish the original mill and put up a lower weaving shed. And it's connected all the way, this weaving shed is connected to the bottom floor of all those houses. Because the spinning mill, when it was first built, used to send the spinning, the thread through to this bottom floor for hand loom weaving. So, and they're still there. They were built by the Crossleys. That's Hope Chapel. That is the other side. They had a mill on the other side as well. So that was still, I think, hang on, or is that the... Yeah, that's the other side, isn't it, Paul, before it burned? Yeah. The mill itself burnt down in 1964. So that was the end of that, and it became a car park. Shall I carry on or? Yeah?
Can you just go to one of Ebenezer Chapel? I really struggled with the one of Ebenezer Chapel.
There?
No, the other one that you showed.
The other one. Hang on, it's probably coming up. I haven't got to it yet. There, yes.
It took me ages to figure out what was going on there.
This is one of our earliest photographs in our slides, plates rather, that we've got in the collection. By the way, this Pennine Horizons Digital Archive, it's up at Birchcliffe. There is a Heritage Day opening on Saturday. If you want to go and see it, if you've never been inside Birchcliffe, it's where the Local History Society has its archives as well, and where South Pennines, we've formed a big archive now called South Pennines Archive. And this is one of the earliest photographs, and it's actually shown the site. This is where Market Street gets built in the 1890s, I think, or 80s and 90s. And this is actually a field called Black Pit Home, I think. And it became Salem Fields, and there was some buildings, some industrial buildings on it. And they were sold off, the land was sold off in plots. And that's when all those shops, as you're going towards Tottenham, all the shops on the left-hand side were then built. And I did have a plan, actually, which I took out with all the dates on. Because when I was doing the research on who built Hebden Bridge, I researched how that all the blocks of houses were all built at different times. All the shops on the right-hand side now were originally houses with balcony, little bay windows and steps up to the front doors. And I think there's only one left where you've got a bay window and steps up. All the rest have been altered. And it's all in planning applications, when they were changed to shop fronts. And it was called Market Street because in fact, for a while, the market was alongside the Ebenezer Chapel, and that was where the manse was, where the Baptist minister would live. And here was where the market was held. So that's how it got its name. For a while, when the buildings were first built, it was Bridge Street, it was called Bridge Street. And then it became Market Street, and in fact Market Street for a while was the name given to all of Bridge Lanes as well. It's really hard to research this place because in the censuses, for example, you don't know exactly which building it's talking about because things have altered, there's no numbers, and it's all called Market Street in one census, and so you haven't got a clue. So I got to sort it out quite a bit, but there's still lots of little bits of work to do on that. And Smith thing there. There's an 1869 painting, which is in the Greenwood room, a print of it, isn't it, a bit smaller, that was done at the time. And when I went to see the painting for real, you know, in the flesh, I could see the word Smith. And I was able to research this. He's a draper, he was a draper, I think, I remember. So, and then we had a photograph with his shop on.
Just on source, really interesting about the archival work. How do you start talking, saying that this is history told through the ideas of prosperous businessmen and their records and of course, is what about sort of like oral history or like alternative history to see why there's different.
Well, in the newspapers, you occasionally get an elderly resident's memories, reminiscences, which are fascinating. And I've also researched some of those, tying them up with the factual knowledge that I've got and researched. So, and in some cases, it's really accurate what they're saying in their reminiscences. In others, there might be just one or two little bits where it might be wrong, you know, they're not remembering correctly. And I mean, there's one, Mrs. Smith, I think. She'd been on the first train trip, you know, the first railway line opened, and that was exciting to read about her experience from that. Yes, there are some, obviously nothing recorded, because recordings didn't come in for ages, but written oral things. But you have to bear in mind that a lot of the writing would have been the reporter writing, not Mrs. Smith herself, say. So it could have been modified, I suppose. This side, none of these were built.
That's the co-op side of the...
Yes, the co-op's about here.
Yeah.
Now this puzzled me for a long while, because that's not there anymore. There was a big fire. But if you look very carefully at the top of the building, back and front, you can see the window ledges, I think. So that's that one. Can I move on? Oops. Have I turned it? Has it gone flat on me? No, I do. Oops. Oh, your battery's running low. That's why it won't do anything. My battery's running low. There we are. It's moving on now. Might be enough power left. So that's the bank, which is still there now, and it's flats, and an empty bottom floor. And for many years, this would have been the entrance to the council chambers, if it had, to the offices and the council chambers above. For many years, that was a dentist, I think, as well. So, next, shall I move on? Yeah. That's modern one. Yes, it doesn't compare to Halifax one, does it? No. It's very...
much bigger, and that's a very bench size with rather more seating with the officials. This is cramped. As the reporter said, there isn't really much accommodation for the public. Some years ago, there was a table of the press in the left corner, just off the screen. With other means of reporting press attendance.
We've lost a lot in our papers by the press not attending council meetings.
74, when the council was reorganised, there weren't the same number of council officials. There weren't the inspector of nuisances. There was just the council clerk who was set in special.
And there are only 14 chairs around the horseshoe, and then the chair and the vice chair would sit at the top. So there is only just enough seats. And a chair for the clerk. So there is only just enough seats for the councillors in the room.
Deputy mayor would sit on the left.
Right down the far side, would sit there, and the clerk.
They still sit in the same seats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
Oh, yeah.
yes,
Yeah. And you can attend if you want to attend a council meeting, you know, just to observe it. You're welcome to.
One of which I always try to avoid.
We'll get to it. Yeah. No, you can't. No, you've got to be quite careful with them. We've refurbished a few of them
Yes,
over
I
time,
noticed
but
that.
Yeah.
we haven't done some for a few years now.
I mean, they were originally plush velvet, so they've long gone. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you'd have to get a special.
Upholstery might have been turned to leather before the listing, and so it's just continuing afterwards. So if you did want to turn it back to plush velvet, you'd have to provide some historical evidence. It's actually a common misconception of people that Grade 2 listed buildings, the internals aren't protected. And that's not true. You have got to get permission if you want to make alterations to your building inside. This is actually, though, the furniture itself is listed in its own right. Whereas most Grade 2 listed buildings, it doesn't sort of detail
if you read the listing, almost everything that's in the council chamber is in that listing record. So it's quite detailed for the building.
So shall I carry on? Sorry. If anything, I nearly fell over the days again this afternoon. I did that a few years back and I've forgotten about it. Sorry, yeah. Mr. Cambridge.
And obviously in all the council meetings, and you sometimes incredible stories about the councillors. And one of the councillors, do you remember the lady?
Yeah.
Well, this father,
yes, you've got a photograph of him.
Because he used to bang the gavel on the desk. And instead of calling to order, he used to say, "Sure."
Was it Mr. Cambridge? Yes. Yeah, he was the clerk to the council for many years. Yeah. I mean, if you don't mind,
She was the first female chairperson.
It would be lovely to have contact with you and get your recollections of your family, or even if you've got some nice photographs of them when they were, it would be great. Because we have got some. Yes, there is. Yes, and we've got one or two. Yeah. But it's really nice to have memories as well, because often what you get from minutes is a very clinical type thing. It doesn't give you the sure-ups, does it? Because when we came to see the new plans for the building a few weeks ago, the door was locked, we couldn't get it. We were looking from here. But I remember there's a huge saying there.
Still there. Still there. Yeah, we'll never get it out. I don't actually think the town council have got any means of opening it either. It's just sat there. There's a safe upstairs in the clerk's office. The next time you come in, just come and find us in the office and we'll let you in. You come in.
Well, one of the projects that we started but didn't finish was to try and do a biography of each of the chairmen and chairwomen of the council. For the photographs that are in the council chamber, and we did quite a lot, but we never finished. Right, well, you can tell us all sorts about it. You also have to remember that all these councillors were unpaid. They were doing it in their own time. Whereas now I think they get a small amount.
He wasn't brilliant, he used people to come in and see him and ask him if they could borrow money from him to pay their bills. And all he used to say, he was quite strict about it. He didn't lend money, his own money. But he also made sure that it came back. So it was a sort of loan scheme in a sense.
Yeah.
But that between everybody in there and every single house in the area. So,
well,
I mean,
yes.
I mean,
there was a lot more hands-on, wasn't there then? I mean, a lot of people get confused today what the responsibilities of the town council are compared to the responsibilities of the Metropolitan Borough Council. And the town council often get unfairly blamed out this Calderdale's shortcoming, shall we say. So, yeah. If any of you are local, there's a ward forum about 3 a year where you can come and in the open forum you can sort of voice your thing about the rubbish or the sanitary condition. That's Calderdale Council, yeah.
Members of the public are welcome to attend the town council meeting.
They come early as well and speak to the councillors, can't they?
There's a small short session for each full council meeting whereby you're raising questions with councillors.
It's perhaps also worth saying that the council chamber is also still used by Errington Parish Council and Wadsworth Parish Council on the opposite two hillsides, and very occasionally by Heptonstall and Blackshaw Head Parish Councils when they want to do something slightly grander.
Shall I move on or we're okay still? These houses, all these houses for a long while, these were demolished, but these existed. And we've got all the details of who lived in them, the rents and everything. And that's quite interesting too. I mean, this stable and this little curvy bit you saw in the first photograph. Love to know more about those buildings. And the other thing is, at one stage, the Trades Club. The Trades Club had their first building before the one in Home Street on this site. We know that from the rent that was being paid. So, carry on, shall I?
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. I suppose people in those days had to walk everywhere if you were. And I mean, Councillor Daniel Jones Crosby sent the letter. He was in a what would be called a bath chair by that time. He was infirm and couldn't get to the council meeting. And the ashtrays, you can see ashtrays on all these. They'd have probably all been heavy smoke, because that's probably the reason why the ventilation wasn't very good. We were all in day's condition. And there was a big ventilator put in, wasn't there, which is now a smaller one. It's not the original. So,
that sort of vent thing on the ceiling is where all the smoke used to go out. Up the top there.
And I
haven't found any fireplaces left at all.
Fill them all in.
So
you mentioned a strong room with a fireproof door. So is that still there then?
Well, there's still a boiler room with a big strong door on it.
There's the vent. Lovely decorative vent there. This photograph was given to the archive in a dreadful state, and I forget the name of the person who's spent hours restoring it to something like that.
What year did the fire station were?
I'd have to look that up. Did I say 1947 they went the recreation went to above there? I think it was still around. I'll have to check. It was still there then, and it's when they built where the car park is opposite the council building. That's where the fire station went to, and I think there's a planning application. I could look it up if you really wanted to know. But I think it's still there.
probably remember that they were all volunteers. And I just remember when I was here, if there was a fire, there'd be a siren sound. And then all the volunteer firemen
would go
down.
No, I think that's right.
Yeah. Whatever they were doing, they just dropped them. They had to live within 5 minutes of the fire station. Yeah, so if I'm walking on that road past people you did hand them.
Well, the school, yeah. I mean, even today, a lot of them are volunteers. They're not paid. Yeah.
They worked as posters, as well as the farm, they worked really well for a long time. But they still be doing their own job until
Diana, you can say something about the tower,
the tower where the hose is it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's round.
Is that round the back?
As you come through from reception into the cafe, you're going under the fire hose tower. Just look up.
Oh, I shall have to have a look. I can't remember that.
So basically what they used to do is after they'd been out to do anything, they just pull the fire hoses up, and if you go into the basement directly below, there's a big sort of drip tray in the basement. Obviously, the whole thing is now is blocked off because the floor is there, but there's a sort of big drip tray that goes out to the river. It caused us a few problems in the Boxing Day floods. That one.
I didn't know that.
I'm surprised nobody's asked me about plans for these two buildings. We have never been able to find them.
Now, whether they are in Calderdale Archives but not filed under building plans because they're part of the council's papers and perhaps nobody knows. One day I might get a box of council stuff and be going through it and oh, there's the plans here, it will all be so great. Because we've never managed to find them. And unfortunately the architect's version of the plans at Todmorden and Roomfield, that was closed down and the plans were probably taken to. I did try and track down where the next architect's office went to, and I didn't get anywhere with that. It was now a solicitors or something in Rochdale. So we don't know what happened to the plans that were in Roomfield. But we have got a lot of architects' things from the 20th century in our archives because that was what was in Hebden Bridge, in the house that's now the Vocation Croft House. So anything in the 20th century, we've got quite a lot of things, not the plans because they're all lodged with the council, but lots of things like tenders, like the architects' details of what materials were used and who the tender went to. So we've got all sorts of things like that relating to buildings in Hebden Bridge. Yeah. Ours didn't. Ours was in the attic. Yes. And for many years, and then when you want to start building, you want to get rid of that. And Calderdale Archives, for some reason, wasn't interested initially, so local history said, well, we'll try and take it. And we started to pack it into boxes and do a rough cataloguing. And then suddenly Calderdale said, oh no, we've got to have them. So it all went to Calderdale. And then there was this several years gap where nothing appeared on the catalogue because it was still doing it, presumably. And then suddenly, one day, you could get things, for the period that these papers were there. Right. Oops, it's gone off now. You've talked so long, it's gone flat.
Well, please, have a cup of tea and a piece of cake. We'll take it home. Otherwise, I've got to eat it all.